and I forget. Teach me, and I remember. Involve me, and I learn. This quote by Benjamin Franklin expresses the crucial role that the involvement of those being taught plays in the learning experience. CareerTrend.com says, there is a huge increase in the amount of information that is retained by students who are given the opportunity to practice what they are learning in the form of hands-on training. When students sit and listen passively in a lecture-style environment, they retain 20% of the information. When they are given the chance to practice what they have just learned, that percentage increases to 75%. In your typical classroom, students are taught math, history, science, English, and language, very important and useful subjects. Although they are taught these subjects, they don't truly learn anything until they put it into action. Today, I am going to expose the importance of an educational philosophy called pragmatism in comparison to today's public education system. I will do so by explaining what pragmatism is, informing you on how education has evolved, and by sharing how life as a teacher and the world as a classroom. Let's begin with my first point. What is pragmatism? Also called experimentalism and described as learning by doing, pragmatism is all about practical learning. An article on study.com explains that pragmatism is an educational philosophy that says that education should be about life and growth. That is, teachers should be teaching students things that are practical for life and encourage them to grow into better people. John Dewey, an American philosopher, psychologist, and educational reformer, is often recognized as a proponent of pragmatism. Dewey once said, "Education is not preparation for life. Education is life itself." He believed in this philosophy so much that he opened the laboratory school. In the laboratory school, extracurricular activities such as cooking and sewing were taught every day, and academic lessons were taught along with them. The students were taught through extracurricular activities because in order to perform an activity such as sewing, you have to know how to read and know certain mathematic concepts. Here, they didn't teach unnecessary concepts. They only taught the students what they needed to know in life when they needed to know it. Regarding the positive effects of this type of schooling, the Positive Encourager.global quotes Peggy Hickman, "The child would experience school as being in a community. This would help the child learn how to share and communicate with others. Problems will be presented to the child and, by trial and error, the child will be able to solve the problem." Every day, these children have the opportunity to learn academics through life lessons. By applying academic principles to real-life challenges, the students could see why they needed to know what they were learning, embrace it, and grow from there. Now that we know what pragmatism is, I'm going to share how education in America has evolved. Modern education in America is much different than the education received by the Pilgrims and Puritans. The first method of education instituted in America by the Pilgrims and Puritans was home education. In his book, The Right Choice, The Incredible Failure of Public Education and the Rising Hope of Homeschooling, author Christopher J. Klicka says, "From the founding of this country by the Pilgrims in 1620 and the Puritans in 1630 to the late 1800s, most education took place in homes, with either the parents or a tutor, usually a pastor, providing the instruction." Klicka also explains that the children were instructed in literacy education, reading and writing, and vocational education, things pertaining to the jobs they would hold in the future. Although vocational education was important, literacy education was crucial to them. They actually made a law known as the Old Deluder Satan Act, which stated that parents were required to teach their children to read and write. The book United States History, Heritage of Freedom explains that the purpose of this act was to equip the children with the ability to read the scriptures so that they will be able to resist the old deluder Satan in his attempt to keep people from knowing the scriptures. Later, Latin grammar schools were established. In his book, Klicka quotes Robert A. Peterson, "For many, formal schooling was simply unnecessary. The fine education they received at home and on the farm held them in good stead for the rest of their lives," and was supplemented with Bible reading and almanacs like Franklin's Poor Richards. By the late 1800s, a new method of education was put into effect. According to Samuel Blumenfeld, who was quoted by Klicka, compulsory education, which required all children to attend school, was established in the 1840s. Compulsory education is still in effect today. PurposeOfSchool.com says that schools in the United States usually focus on civic, emotional, and cognitive development. Civic development deals with teaching students how to become responsible, productive, hard-working citizens and leaders. Emotional development has to do with things like building the student's self-esteem, instilling a love of learning, teaching moral character, and maturing the students. The final core element, cognitive development, focuses on preparing the students academically. There is a huge misconception about education in America today. Many people believe that the reason why schools educate the way they do is because it was proven that the current way is the only way that works. This is the farthest thing from the truth. As we can see through our founding fathers who were taught pragmatically, that way of educating is successful. Now that we know what pragmatism is and how education in America has evolved, I will share how life as a teacher and the world as a classroom. Now, in saying life as a teacher and the world as a classroom, I'm not saying that people shouldn't go to school or that we don't need teachers. Teachers, schools, and the education they provide are necessary, but it is life that reinforces what is taught, and application and experience take place in the world. Math is not my favorite subject. Growing up, I remember thinking, all I need to learn is addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, and then I'll be done with math. Then, in the 6th grade, I met algebra. I hated doing it until my mom showed me why I was doing it. She took me to the grocery store and showed me where and how I would apply the formulas I was learning. When she did that, math came to life for me, and I actually started to enjoy it. That is what the Irish poet William Butler Yeats meant when he said, "Education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire." Learning should be enjoyable, not stressful. And most of the time, the things that we learn inside of a classroom can also be learned outside of a classroom. After learning about colonial Virginia, my mom took my siblings and I to colonial Williamsburg. We saw old buildings, cannons, horses, and people dressed in colonial clothing. That experience brought to life and reinforced what I was taught about colonial Virginia. Although it may seem odd to some, students don't always have to learn through textbooks. There is a world outside of our four walls that can teach much more than a textbook ever could. Today I have exposed the importance of pragmatism in comparison to today's public education system by explaining what pragmatism is, informing you on how education has evolved, and by sharing how life as a teacher and the world as a classroom. As you may be able to tell, I'm quite passionate about the philosophy of pragmatism. The reason behind this passion is my school career. I attended a public school for 6 years, and I've been homeschooled for almost 7 years. Now, during that time, I've been educated many different types of ways, but I've noticed that when I'm taught pragmatically, my ability to recall information is better, and I enjoy learning more. Proverbs 4:7 says, "Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom, and in all you're getting, get understanding." Wisdom and understanding are acquired not when you gain knowledge, but when you apply knowledge. And many students today are not given the opportunity to apply what they are learning to their lives. Now you may be wondering, what can I do about this? If we truly want to help future generations succeed, then we need to include our students in the learning process and teach them things that are practical for life so that they can grow in wisdom and understanding. As American writer Dale Carnegie said, learning is an active process. We learn by doing. Only knowledge that is used sticks in your mind. Thank you.
Good, I think.
9:17.